In this video, I'm going to be taking a look at each chapter of Fortnite and ranking them from worst to best. I thought it would be a good idea to do this before chapter 6 comes out because I want to make a video on that chapter when it comes out and also make a prediction video for that. But for now, I thought we could look at the 5 existing chapters and rank them from the least good to the best. It goes without saying, this is just my opinion. If you disagree, that's completely fine, and you can let me know in the comments as long as you're respectful about it. So without wasting any more time, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy, and let's start with what I believe to be the weakest chapter of Fortnite. Coming in at last place, I have chapter 4. This is by no means awful or anything like that. It just, to me, is the clear least good out of the 5. So the reason that I have it here is because to me it has what is the worst selection of seasons. It is also a little unfair because the later chapters have much less seasons in them. The first 2 had 10 and then, well, the second one had 8. But the more recent ones, this one had 4. So it might not really be fair to compare them, but that's obviously a factor. You can't really compete with previous seasons because there's just not as much content and seasons in it. Now, it had what is, in my opinion, the worst season of the whole game, which is Primal. I think that this season, they tried to do a lot of new things, but none of them really worked out for me. And if it did for you, that's great. I'm happy that you liked it. But for me, nothing really worked in that season. I think that chapter 4 was when they just tried to do a lot of new things, and some of it worked. But as a whole, I just think that chapter 4 is, to me at least, the clear weakest out of the 5. Also, in chapter 4 season 2, they added in Mega City, and I hated that so much. Everyone loves that. I hate it. I would always get bloody destroyed there. So look, it might be a little bit biased because I could not play the game at this point. I would hop on nowhere near as much as I do now or previously, just because I would always land there and then just get killed. It was just so annoying. So a bit biased there, but still, I do think this chapter is the weakest, and I found that I was getting annoyed at the game a lot more in this chapter. I might be crazy on that, I don't know, but let's move on to the second worst chapter. So I don't know if this is controversial, but I think that chapter 3 is easily just the most forgettable. Now, this one had the same amount of seasons as the one that would come after that we just covered, chapter 4, but to me, this one doesn't really have many that are all that bad. It's just that there is a bunch that is just super forgettable. The only one that I really remember from this chapter is Vibin, and even then, that one was okay. I don't really remember much about this season or any season in this chapter. It really is just the most forgettable. Again, there isn't as much in this as the chapters that came before, so there isn't too much to compare it with. I heard that there were some issues going on behind the scenes, I don't know if that's correct or not, for this chapter that made them shorten it. That might not be true, but overall I think this is just the most forgettable. I think that with every chapter that is released, there's at least one that really stands out. Even in, chapter 5, which a lot of people don't like, to me there is still 1 or 2 seasons in that I really enjoyed. But for this and chapter 4, there were ones that were okay, but I feel like this was the period of Fortnite, and it still was happening now, where they try to change too much and it doesn't really work all that well. I also want to say that for this one, the map changed a decent amount, as it usually does, including in chapter 4. I think the map wasn't the best in that, and I think that the map has been getting worse just since chapter 1, chapter 2. Chapter 5's map is okay, but this map to me is probably the weakest. I never really liked it. I'm not entirely sure why, it just doesn't really work for me. So, in the 3rd place, I have chapter 5, and I'm sure a lot of you are surprised by that because I know a lot of people don't really like this chapter. But the reason I have it 3rd is that I think that it has a lot of ups and a lot of downs, but I think that the ups were pretty solid and could compare to the earlier days of Fortnite. Not saying that the game was as good as it was in, 2018, 2019, whatever like that, but I'm just saying that I think that it had this sort of fun element that I hadn't really felt in the game since then. So why did I put it above chapter 3 and chapter 4? Really, it just comes down to the fact that in this chapter, they tried to do a whole lot more than before. And because they put so much more effort into the game, I think that some things worked and some things made the game feel more fun, and some things really did nothing. Like rocket racing and Lego Fortnite, I have barely touched those. I always see like 10 people playing Rocket Racing. I don't think it's very popular. Lego Fortnite seems really popular for some reason. I couldn't really tell you why I played it, and I found it really boring, but I don't know. If you enjoy it, that's good. For me, the Fortnite Festival was definitely the best thing they added. It was pretty good. I think that it's very fun. But they also added in new movement, which at the start, yes, it was awful, but they fixed it up. And as I said before, I think the map for this one, I've played the season a bit more, so again, this could be a bit of bias, but I think that this map is still pretty solid. I definitely like it when it's just at its base form, like in Chapter 5 Season 1, but the way that they've sort of developed it, it still looks cool and it's still fun to explore at times, but they definitely try to make the game look realistic. And to me, Fortnite's charm comes from it not being all that great in terms of the graphics and how it looks in the world, but I still think that this looks pretty good. Now, I might surprise some people with this, but to me the weakest season in Chapter 5 is actually the current one. I'm not too big on the Marvel crossovers that they do, but I think that they added in a lot of cool movement stuff like the Iron Man boots and stuff, and they've also added in a lot of other movement things throughout this chapter that are really cool. I believe this is also when they first debuted battle passes that weren't just the overall battle pass. Like there were some for like characters, like the Ninja Turtles got one, Solid Snake got one, I'm pretty sure. I don't know, I can't remember that being in a previous chapter. I could be wrong about that. And overall, there's just a lot of changes to the game. Some of them weren't great, some of them haven't been fixed, but some of them were pretty good and definitely helped the life of this game. I think without this chapter, the game definitely would have died down even more. Not to say that the game is extremely popular like it was back in 2018 to like 2020, but I think that this game definitely improved this year. Not to say it was amazing or anything, but definitely a step in the right direction, and it makes me a little bit more confident in what they might have in store for Season 6. So, next up, and I know a lot of people won't agree with me on this, is Chapter 1. So I know a lot of you would expect me to put this first, and originally in the script I had thought that I would, but I've actually changed my mind while recording, and this completely comes down to bias, but I also believe it to be true in some ways. I think that every chapter has its time in the sun, and it also has times where it just isn't as good. And to me, of course, this is where Fortnite was getting started, and I think that the sort of time from Season 2 to like 7, that was really cool. Now, I have said before in videos that I don't think I started playing until around Season 6, 7 and 8. I was playing a little bit but not much, but I do remember the Christmas cabin. Somehow, I don't really know why I feel nostalgia towards it when I feel like I only really played the game like a tiny bit at that time, but I do remember the aeroplanes and the Infinity Blade, so I was definitely playing then, but I didn't start till later in the first chapter, so I don't have all that much experience with it. So I think that each season in Chapter 1 was really good, especially for its time. Like the first chapter didn't really have much going on, but I think that Chapter 2 and then 3, I think a lot of people think Chapter 3 to like 5 is just the peak of the game, and I would agree, but I hadn't started playing yet, so I feel like it wouldn't really be fair if I put that first, just because that's the popular opinion, because I never played it. Like, this game was so huge back then. Everyone that was around just playing games at that time will remember seeing this game on the news and stuff like that. Like, it was pretty crazy. This game was massive. And you can see that when they released last year the OG chapter for like a month, like the player numbers went through the roof, because this is, generally speaking, I'd say like 80%. That's not really based on anything, that's just my guess, but like 80% of players' favorite sort of memories with Fortnite, favorite area of Fortnite's history, is usually in the first chapter or two, which leads me to the number 1 spot. Chapter 2 to me overall is just the strongest for a couple of reasons. I think that it definitely recovered, because at the end of Chapter 1, a lot of people didn't love Season 9 and Season 10, and they did this thing, for everyone that remembers this, is the game was completely offline for I believe it was 2 or 3 days, and when you'd open the game you'd just see like a little black hole basically, and then eventually when that ended we would play a trailer for Chapter 2. And a lot of people didn't like this, but personally, I loved Chapter 2 Season 1. It went on for ages, but I really liked this chapter. I think it was, weirdly enough, the first battle pass I ever bought. And while not the strongest battle pass, I actually think it was pretty solid in comparison to what we're getting nowadays. And then I think that Chapter 2 Season 2 is arguably one of the best, definitely top 3 in the game's history. And I definitely am assuming it's going to be coming back in the Chapter 2 OG that's coming out in about a week from now. And the reason that this is so memorable is because a lot of people were stuck in their house at this time. It's sort of crazy to think that Chapter 2 was all the way back in 2020. Like that was a really long time ago, but a lot of people were stuck in their house, obviously for a specific reason, including myself. So I was playing this game instead of doing school, as you do. And yeah, it was annoying landing at the agency and just getting murdered by bots and stuff. But it was fun doing it with your friends. And I think that as this chapter went on, it does what all of them do, where it seems like they sort of run out of cool ideas. They try to change things, some work, some don't. But I think that overall, this chapter had some really decent battle passes, some really cool locations. And I won't lie, the bias has definitely come out because this is probably the chapter I spent the most hours on. So let me know in the comments, what's your favorite chapter of Fortnite? What's your least favorite? I probably made some mistakes in this video. I did try to check all the things I was saying, but if something is wrong, let me know. I'll hopefully have fixed it. Like, I'll pop up some text if I miss anything or if I say something that's incorrect. But I hope you enjoyed the video. I also hope you have a great day. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you did. And I hope to see you in the next video, everyone.